Whereas now it's become sort of like a war zone to even have a different opinion than somebody else, which is just really a shame. It's really a shame in our society.
And yeah, and even with the very easygoing posts I made, it was just more like asking people to understand that like this is my stance on this.
Hmm.
I have people who I love who are in fact on the other side, who I love and respect.
Welcome, everybody, to Realizations. This is the podcast that talks about everything to do with real estate. As you all know, I started the podcast a little over a year ago because I got really, really angry at the DOJ and AR lawsuits, along with the commission lawsuits. And I thought, I'll be angry for years, or maybe I can do something positive. And I realized that what really happened there was that the American public doesn't really know what realtors do. They don't know the people that we intersect with. They don't know how important our industry is to their different cities and municipalities of varying kinds. They don't know what is involved in being a real estate agent. And since they don't know, they assume it's not much. And I wanted to make sure people understood the complexity of what it is that we do and why our jobs are important and why we cannot be replaced by some little program. So, welcome to the show today, Alex Mayer. You are in Rochester, Minnesota. You're through EXP Realty, and you're also a residential realtor just like me. I am, of course, because of what's going on in the world today, wondering what the ramifications of everything that's been going on in Minneapolis are on your real estate business, if anything. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so Rochester, Minnesota is about an hour and 15 minutes drive south of Minneapolis. I actually just flew into Minneapolis this afternoon. I had to go for a family emergency down in Scottsdale, Arizona. But I don't know, do a lot of business up in Minneapolis. About 60% of my business is actually here in the city of Rochester. I typically serve Rochester in a 45-mile radius. If I go too much farther than that, it's a little too much for me. Of course, I get a lot of people who are relocating from the Twin Cities to Rochester. And my assistant, she's based out of Savage, Minnesota, which is near Minneapolis. And I'm getting a lot of information about what's going on there. She's part of the rapid response groups up there, which, contrary to what you might be hearing or seeing on social media, the protesters are very organized up in the
Hmm.
cities. And what the media is portraying,
Hmm.
what I would call blatant lies,
Hmm.
is certainly not what is happening with boots on the ground. There are people who are being detained simply for the color of their skin. They are not taking any information as far as like you can carry your passport around, you can carry your papers on you. They do not care. They will detain you. I've had instances where I've heard that school buses are being followed and they are waiting for parents to come out to grab their kids outside of buses. I'm in Rochester, Minnesota. And after the first shooting, gosh, what was it, 3 weeks ago now?
Oh
January was
no,
a long year, okay?
this is the longest year and it's only February 3rd.
Yes. And to be frank, like this feels very much like an occupation.
Hmm.
And it is, it's historically, well, this has never happened before. There's never been a situation where there's been 3,000 federal troops sent to a state to go over something like this, who are carrying who are wearing masks, wearing guns. The ICE of the last 12 months is not the ICE of 2 years ago. So when I hear
Hmm.
people say, deportations, I could go into this all day long, but the
Right.
reality is like there is a lot of fear.
Yeah.
There is, you will be driving on the road. You will see cars just kind of parked off and just kind of off to the side. I'm currently fostering a dog, Balto, and one of the reasons why we had to pick him up as a foster is the previous owners. I don't know if they were undocumented, but I know that they were in fear, and the neighbors had to collect the dog and ultimately find a new placement for him. And if you actually look at what's happening up in Minneapolis right now, the shelters are really full.
Oh my
And
God.
these agents are not doing things the right way. They're just leaving cars on the side of the road. The pets aren't being taken care of if they're inside of a house. And again, they are not just detaining people who don't have papers. Like this is an intimidation technique. I assure anyone who's listening to this, who is seeing what's on the media, what is happening boots on the ground is way worse. And what
That's what I've heard that from everyone. I've heard that from everyone. And this is America. This is America, the land of the free, the land that it opens its arms to everyone. I'm so disgusted. I'm seething, and I can say these things in Berkeley, California, because we're not like occupied like you guys are yet. But the idea that this could be happening in our world, how has it affected real estate? Probably pretty profoundly, I would guess.
You know, most of it, I personally, I'm pretty blessed within my business down in Rochester. Rochester's a pretty booming market. We are very inoculated versus what's going on because of the Mayo Clinic.
Hmm.
Of course, Mayo Clinic is the #1 hospital in the world, and we have a lot of, doctors who have been, stopped and have had conversations with ICE agents. They are going door to door in the city of Rochester. After the very first shooting, I believe the ICE agents really came down here more and really started targeting some of these surrounding towns because they needed to kind of get out for a minute. But you know, my business personally hasn't been too affected. However, about 2.5 weeks ago, I went to Rochester Title, one of the title companies here in Rochester. They had this thing called Soups on, which is kind of funny. We got a bunch of starving realtors in January, so let's put up some let's warm up some soup for them, right? And I have here in the city of Rochester, I'm pretty well known. I have a pretty good brand, and I got relationships with agents at virtually every brokerage. And
Right.
one of these agents, she is a Spanish speaking specialist. And she kind of she's known me for a long time, and she pulled me aside into one of the rooms. Just she wasn't necessarily in tears, but you could see that she was kind of on the cusp of
Oh,
it. He's saying that all of my clients have taken their foot off the gas, and they're
oh,
not.
of course they have.
And that was a devastating thing to see, right? Like this person who is a relatively successful agent just really stressed about the whole situation on behalf of her clients. Here in the city of Rochester, it seems like every week on the social medias that I'm seeing on the forums here, there are business owners who are making posts about how like their business is down significantly.
Hmm.
Latino and the Asian communities here in Rochester have stated, I don't know where they're getting the data, but I don't disbelieve it, saying that their business is down by about 60%.
Hmm.
And I could see that, not necessarily because, they were, delivering to illegal immigrant or undocumented immigrants,
No.
but because people are afraid to go to these places because they're afraid of being accosted by an agent, right? Uh,
Yeah.
my personal experiences in Rochester has been mostly I've been out on showings and I've just seen these cars kind of flash, these unmarked cars start flashing lights, and they pull someone over, and then another car pulls up right in front of them at an angle. So they're just these are not trained professionals and
Mhm.
not handling things the right way, and so it's more fear and anxiety. I'm as much as we're talking about this now, I'm actually very private about. I'm very open amongst people who know me about my lead.
Hmm.
But as far as from a business perspective, my very first post publicly. Again, I have a very large following in Rochester where I posted a sign of my dogs with
Hmm.
an Ice Out MSP
Hmm.
poster that I had taken last Wednesday. And the post did blow up. I got a lot of positive review. It's difficult for us as business owners, and Andrea, it sounds like you've done a really good job with your brand, where you're structured things like that, and that's great. And I believe in that. But when I voice an opinion, I will get attacked for it, and
Hmm.
to have such a public brand to do that, that was a very difficult thing for me to do. I know directly I lost at least one client from it. However, I do feel like I've gotten a lot of love. I've had a lot of private messages of people reaching out to me to, tell me that they appreciate that I did that. I had a few large business professionals who are bringing resources together and reaching out to try to find places that will help them hide
Hmm.
these resources, like
Hmm.
literally hide resources. Like that is where we're at right now. And a few people that I haven't heard from in a long time reach out to me, expressing how much they appreciate that because this is what's happening up here is bad. And-
No, you know what? I think it's very, very brave of you. It is way less brave of me to say, to express my very liberal views in Berkeley, California, because pretty much everybody here thinks the same way I do. It's a rarity to come across someone who doesn't feel the same way I do about everything. Whereas, oh, look, there's your kitty. Whereas, aw, kitty booper. Whereas, where you are, there is a division. There are people on both sides. You can affect your business dramatically and badly by expressing your political views, which I think is a shame. And it's a shame that it's come to that. When I was a little girl, Republicans and Democrats could have very substantive, interesting conversations and still shake hands and go play tennis together or do whatever. Whereas now it's become sort of like a war zone to even have a different opinion than somebody else, which is just really a shame. It's really a shame in our society.
And yeah, and even with the very easygoing post I made, it was just more like asking people to understand that like this is my stance on this.
Mm-hmm.
I have people who I love who are in fact on the other side, who I love and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm asking is that I'm afforded the same, respect that I'm allowed to have an opinion
Mm-hmm.
more than like, anyone who is voicing otherwise is, just a horrible person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was tough to see that post kind of get the negativity that it did. I got a lot of love. I'll be very clear. I got more love than I did hate. But it
Well,
was,
love's going to win out. At the end of the day, love will absolutely win out. I love it, by the way, that you foster animals and that you have dogs. And, it's just such a shame to hear that these horrible ICE people, on top of ruining people's lives, are actually setting animals up for failure too by leaving them behind, and that the shelters are full. It's so depressing to even hear that, and that's a story that isn't being told in our neck of the woods.
we got bigger
Um,
problems. That's the simple reality with it. And, a lot of one of the things that's kind of sad is there's a lot of group forums out there, and anyone who's paying attention to social media knows just how terrible it is. And I always encourage people privately and now publicly, I suppose, that like if you look at the people who are saying these really just vile things, and you just go to their Facebook page, you're going to figure out really quick that these people have like 200, 300 friends on. These are fake accounts. They're not real people. And what it ends up doing is it does start emboldening the 1 in 5 people who do actually feel that way to
right.
actually step out and say negative things like that because they're getting this sort of positive, support from these bots. These are not real. I should be cautious with how far I go with a lot of those things, but
No, no,
it is
I
it
agree
is
with you.
it is scary because I think a good portion of the budget that was approved last year to support these people, I think that they went out and straight up hired some sort of advertising agency to start supporting these things with bots.
Oh,
These
of
are really
course they did.
these are dark times,
Of
and
course they did. I mean, look what during the election, look at the Russian meddling in online, in social media, and as realtors, we're very aware of how social media is used. We work very hard on it every day. I look at it every day. I have different accounts. Some of them are private, some of them are personal. Some of them are business forward. I don't do any of my political stuff on my business facing stuff because why would I? But sometimes people infiltrate on there too, and they can look you up and they can find you and what have you. And again, I'm in a good perch here because I live in Berkeley, where Robert Reich is from, and where where there are liberal think tanks, what have you. But other parts of the world, it's a little scarier and a little bit more difficult. So, what is your prognosis for the rest of the year for yourself as a realtor? Do you feel like you're insulated, like you'll be okay? What do you think is going to happen business wise in Rochester, Minnesota?
so I feel like I'm pretty inoculated against it. In the city of Rochester, as far as like the local community for voting systems, I've won best real estate agent the last 4 years, and so I'm not too concerned
Mm-hmm.
about like my business collapsing. And I was raised working class, so for the income that I make now, there's a certain point where enough is enough, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more about doing good work and service than it is actually about making money. And
Mm-hmm.
believe me, I'm here to make money. Look, but ultimately, there's a limitation to, how important that becomes. I feel like my brand's pretty thorough in Rochester. I practice what I call Lasso strategy: land, air, sea, space, and operatives. So there's a lot of different angles that I approach marketing and branding. that
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about things so much. So like belly to belly, I'm a member of three different gyms here in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
People recognize me from there. I have advertisements at gyms. I have coasters at 20 different restaurants and bars with me and the dogs on them and some of the awards. I got postcards out there, three radio stations running ads, two billboards, four buses,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and running all those and the digital stuff from, you were talking about social media. I have a large Meta following. I run advertising on there. I also have, 300 5-star reviews and a lot of really good information online. And then on top of that, I've been really specializing into the AI citation space lately. I
Mm-hmm.
really think that is the new frontier in real estate. I'm not talking about like creating some fake clone of myself. But
Which I have seen online, by the way. It's scary.
there's a lot of people they're thinking that's the thing, but I'm telling you, like consumers aren't dumb. They know that it's not you actually recording that video. When I'm talking to something on the phone and it's an automated thing, like that doesn't fuse you. I want to talk to a human being who understands what's going on. And I think too many agents are using AI to cut corners, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking to use it the right way. I
Yeah.
still use it for research and looking up things and for running ideas through, just like anyone should be using it. But what I really believe nowadays is consumers are going on to ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, AI overviews, and they're saying, who is a great real estate agent in Rochester, Minnesota, for me to sell my home fast? I'm inherited my mother's home. I need to buy and sell at the same time. I've never done that, or I'm a first time home buyer and I don't really know where to start. People are going into AI and they're asking
Oh,
these things.
absolutely. I actually got a client the other day because ChatGPT told them I was the best agent in Berkeley.
And you can optimize for that too. Around the end of November, I started noticing this trend, right? At that point, I'd had three clients tell me that they had found me through ChatGPT. One told me they found me from Gemini. So at that moment, I'm like, okay, something's happening here that I need to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to. And I went down a YouTube rabbit hole, and then I committed myself to what at the time I called it my space race, right? That's why I call it
Mm-hmm.
my space area right there, because I believe you're either Netflix in your market or you're going to be Hulu, right? You got to be the first, or everybody else is going to be fighting over second and third place.
Right.
When I started to notice that, I was like, okay, how can I optimize my digital footprint such that these AI crawlers, when people are searching for best real estate agent for this, how is it, can I make it so that my name shows up in the citations? And if you go on and you say, top real estate agent in Rochester, Minnesota, who can explain things to me in an easy to understand way, who is a direct representation agent, who can educate someone relocating to work at the Mayo Clinic here in Rochester, Minnesota. I will show up. It's like a magic 8 ball. It's not always going to be 100%, right? You're going to get an
Right.
answer every time. It's a generative search engine. It's creating the content as you're asking it. But I got about a 70% chance of showing up as the first citation as an agent for people to recommend on that.
Well, that is absolutely brilliant, Alex. And it's, by the way, what a pleasure to talk to you. I want our relationship to continue. And if I ever have anybody for Rochester, Minnesota, I'm going to certainly send them your way. Before I forget, can you tell people how they can get a hold of you?
So I will accept friend requests on my personal page. I one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that you got to kind of give up as a real estate agent on keeping your life private to a certain degree, right?
Mhm.
And you just got to kind of give up on that. One of my other strategies is I'm really big, what I call operatives is I know exactly who my top 150 supporters are, right? They're on
Mhm.
a list, I
Mhm.
have their address, I know everything about them. If I see them out in the market, I'm gonna know how their life's going and everything. And for all the marketing and branding that I do, I would say over half of my business is directly a repeat referral.
Yeah,
And
and that's the way it is in real estate. That's what happens. So if somebody has just thought to themselves, Alex is the realtor I want to work with, where do they find you? How do they what's your address? How do they get a hold of you?
you want me to give my personal address? No. So if you go to my Facebook page, that's gonna be the best place to really collaborate with me. Alex Mayer, that's Alex Mayers, Mayer. You can also find me on my website, Rochester Area Homes by Alex.com. Those are probably the easiest ways to contact me. I'm actually pretty easy to connect with. Responsiveness is a core value, so if someone reaches out to me, I do respond to them.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for your time today. I know you've just gotten back from your trip and you've got lots and lots of things to do, so I'm not going to hold you up further, but this was a really fascinating conversation and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Happy to help.
All right. Take good care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
If you loved hearing from these incredible voices shaping real estate, you'll want to catch what's next. Click the video on screen to keep discovering more inspiring stories.